I had driven thousands of miles for work over the years, and if there was one thing I trusted more than road signs, it was my GPS. That trust disappeared on October 14th, 2018. It was a Sunday. My wife Laura sat beside me, reading messages on her phone, while our 10-year-old son, Ethan, slept in the back seat. We were driving home to Louisville after spending the weekend with Laura's parents in southern Ohio. The weather forecast called for light rain. Nothing unusual. Traffic was moving normally until around 4 in the afternoon. About 30 miles north of Maysville, every car in front of us slowed to a stop. An overturned fuel tanker had closed the highway. Police estimated the road would remain blocked for at least 4 hours. I sighed and opened the GPS. Almost immediately it suggested another route. New route found save, 51 minutes. I pressed accept. Laura looked over. Another shortcut? Looks like it. You remember the last shortcut? I laughed. The one where we ended up behind a tractor for an hour? She smiled. Exactly. This one looks better. I wish I'd listened to her silence after that. The interstate disappeared behind us. Within 15 minutes, we found ourselves driving through a heavily wooded part of eastern Kentucky. The road became narrower with every mile. Fresh asphalt slowly turned into cracked pavement. Guardrails disappeared. Telephone poles became older. Some leaned so far they looked ready to fall into the trees. There weren't many houses, only abandoned barns, broken fences, empty fields swallowed by weeds. It felt less like driving through a town, and more like driving through somewhere people had forgotten. The GPS announced another turn. In 1,000 feet, turn left onto Black Hollow Road. I slowed. There wasn't a proper intersection, only a faded wooden sign standing beside a rusted mailbox. The white paint had almost completely peeled away. Someone had written the road's name again using black spray paint. Black Hollow Road. Nothing else, no town, no route number, no warning. I turned left. The moment our tires touched the road, my phone lost service. Laura checked hers. No signal. Mine too. We'll get it back. Neither of us sounded convinced. The forest immediately became darker. The trees stood incredibly close to the road, their branches stretched over us until they almost touched, even though it was barely after 5 in the afternoon. It looked closer to sunset. Ethan suddenly woke up. Are we almost home? Not yet. He rubbed his eyes and looked out the window. I don't like these woods. Laura turned around. Why? He shrugged. They're too quiet. I rolled my window down slightly. He was right. No birds, no insects, no wind, nothing, only the steady hum of the engine. Even that sounded strange, as if something outside was swallowing the noise before it could travel very far. About 10 minutes later, we passed the first house, or what used to be one. It sat less than 20 feet from the road. The porch had collapsed. Every window was covered with plywood. The front door hung open. Yet, warm yellow light glowed from somewhere inside. Laura frowned. Did you see that? I did. Somebody lives there? I guess. Before I could finish the sentence, Ethan leaned forward between our seats. Dad? What? Someone standing in the doorway. I looked in the mirror. The house was already disappearing behind us. For just a second, I thought I saw a figure standing perfectly still beneath the broken porch roof. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, or even if it was really there at all. Then the trees blocked the view. I kept driving, trying to convince myself that I'd imagined it Laura kept watching the rear-view mirror long after the abandoned house disappeared behind the trees. Finally, she looked back at me. "Did you actually see someone?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I don't know." "You don't know. Or you don't want to tell me." "I saw something." She folded her arms without saying another word. That was one thing about Laura. Whenever she became nervous, she stopped talking. Normally that meant I was the one trying to lighten the mood. This time I couldn't think of anything funny to say. The road continued straight for several miles. No intersections, no driveways, no signs of civilization, just endless forest. The farther we drove, the older everything looked. Even the asphalt had changed. Grass pushed through long cracks. Tree roots bulged beneath the pavement. It looked less like a maintained county road, and more like something nature had been trying to reclaim for decades. Then Ethan quietly spoke from the back seat. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "There's another car." I checked the mirror. Nothing. "I don't see one. It's farther back." Laura turned around. "There isn't anything there, sweetheart." He didn't answer. He simply kept staring through the rear window. Almost a full minute passed. Then he whispered, "It turned its lights off." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Without thinking, I looked again. Still nothing. But for reasons I couldn't explain, I pressed the accelerator. 5 minutes later, beep. We found another road sign, unlike the first one. This one looked brand new, bright reflective lettering, fresh metal post. Only 3 words. No services ahead, no mileage, no town names, nothing else. Laura frowned. "How can there be no services?" "What do you mean?" "We've already been driving almost 40 minutes. She looked at the GPS. The screen was frozen. Our blue location arrow had disappeared completely. Only the road remained, as though we no longer existed on the map. I restarted it. Nothing changed. The estimated arrival time vanished. Distance remaining. Blank. For the first time all afternoon, I seriously considered turning around. I slowed the truck, looked ahead, then behind us. The road behind somehow seemed different, darker, almost narrower than before. I couldn't explain why, but the idea of driving back suddenly felt worse than continuing forward, so I kept going. The next thing we noticed was the smell. Laura wrinkled her nose. "Do you smell smoke?" I nodded. "Not fresh smoke. Old smoke, like burned wood after rain." The smell grew stronger with every mile. Soon we saw why. Blackened tree trunks lined both sides of the road. Hundreds of them. Every tree had burned, yet none had fallen. The fire had stopped with impossible precision. Beyond the burned section, healthy green forest continued untouched. It looked as though an invisible wall had separated life from destruction. Ethan quietly asked, "What happened here?" Neither of us answered, because neither of us knew. The burned forest stretched for nearly 5 miles. Not a single green branch remained. Every trunk stood black against the fading evening sky, their bark cracked and peeling like old charcoal. The strange thing wasn't that the trees had burned, it was how perfectly they had burned. No grass had caught fire. No road signs were damaged. Even the wooden fence posts scattered through the woods remained untouched. Only the trees. Laura rolled her window down an inch. The smell of wet ash drifted inside. "It's fresh," she whispered. "It can't be." "Why not?" "The rain would have washed it away." She didn't answer. She simply rolled the window back up. A few minutes later, we noticed something else. The dashboard clock read 5:23 p.m. I glanced at my wristwatch. It read 6:11 p.m. Laura looked at her phone. My phone says 6:11:2. The truck's clock was almost 50 minutes behind. I pressed the adjustment button. Nothing happened. The numbers refused to change. Then, without warning, the seconds stopped moving. The dashboard clock had frozen completely. "Dad!" Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah? I keep seeing somebody." I looked into the mirror. "Where?" "Between the trees." Laura turned toward him. "What do they look like?" "I don't know." "Is it a man?" He slowly shook his head. "A woman?" Another shake. "It's just someone standing there." He pointed toward the passenger side. "They don't move." Laura immediately looked outside. Nothing. Only burned trees disappearing into darkness. "I think you're just tired, buddy." He didn't argue, but he kept staring out the window, as if he knew something we didn't. Then the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the truck. A loud burst of crackling made all three of us jump. I reached for the power button. Before I could touch it, a man's voice broke through the static. "Don't stop." The signal vanished. Static again. "Keep driving." More static. "Whatever you do." The voice became clearer. "Don't let them make you stop." Silence. The radio shut itself off. Laura looked at me. "You heard that?" I nodded slowly. "I heard it." Neither of us laughed. Neither of us tried explaining it away, because deep down, we both knew. That message hadn't come from any local radio station about another mile ahead, but we finally saw another vehicle. It was an old pickup truck parked on the shoulder. Its driver's door stood wide open. The headlights were still on. One tire had gone flat. I slowed instinctively. Laura grabbed my arm. "Don't. What if someone needs help?" She looked toward the truck. Then her face changed. "David." "What?" "Look inside." I leaned forward. The driver's seat was empty. The passenger seat was empty. The back seat contained 3 suitcases, a child's stuffed bear, and 2 fast food drinks that still had ice floating inside them. Whoever had been traveling in that truck couldn't have been gone for very long. Yet there wasn't a single person anywhere around it. No footprints, no voices, no movement. Only the quiet forest watching from both sides of the road. Just as I started pressing the accelerator again, Ethan gasped, "Dad, what?" "They're behind the truck." I looked again. At first, I saw nothing. Then, far back among the burned trees, 3 pale figures stood perfectly still, too far away to identify, too motionless to be normal. They weren't walking toward us. They weren't waving. They were simply watching. I pressed the gas pedal harder. Within seconds, the abandoned truck disappeared in the rearview mirror. But somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that the 3 figures had never taken their eyes off us. For the next 15 minutes, no one said a word. I kept both hands tight on the steering wheel. Laura stared through the windshield. Ethan sat perfectly still in the back seat. The silence inside the truck somehow felt heavier than the silence outside. Every now and then I looked in the rearview mirror. I never saw the 3 figures again, but I couldn't stop checking. It felt like the moment I looked away, they would be standing behind us. The road suddenly dipped into a narrow valley. Dense fog hugged the pavement. Not ordinary fog. This was different. It stayed low, only reaching about 3 feet high. The tops of the trees remained perfectly clear. Only the road disappeared beneath a blanket of white. I slowed to 30 miles an hour. Laura leaned closer to the windshield. "I don't like this. I can barely see." The truck rolled carefully through the fog. Our headlights reflected back at us. Visibility dropped to less than 20 feet. Then, something crossed the road. Fast, too fast. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded several feet before stopping. Laura grabbed the dashboard. What was that? I don't know. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. The headlights illuminated the empty pavement. Nothing stood there, nothing moved. Only the fog drifting slowly across the road. Ethan spoke quietly. It wasn't an animal. Laura turned. What do you mean? It was a person. I looked back at him. Did you see someone? He nodded once. They ran across the road. Were they hurt? No. What did they look like? He hesitated. They didn't have a face. The truck became completely silent. I forced myself to keep driving. Stopping out here didn't feel like an option anymore. The fog finally began to thin. As it cleared, something appeared on the right side of the road. An old gas station. At least, it had once been one. The building looked abandoned. The fuel pumps were rusted. Every window was covered with dirt. A faded sign still hung above the entrance. Black Hollow Service. The last fuel prices were frozen in time. Regular were $1.14, Laura whispered. That place hasn't been open in years. I nodded, yet something immediately caught my attention. A single light burned inside. Dim, yellow. Barely visible through the dirty glass. Someone, or something, had electricity. As we passed the station, I noticed another detail. There were cars parked beside the building, 5 of them. Everyone covered in dust, except one. A silver SUV. Its windshield was still wet, like it had arrived recently. The driver's door stood open. Keys still hung from the ignition. No one was inside. No one stood nearby. It looked exactly like someone had stepped out and simply disappeared. Laura quietly reached over and held my hand. It was ice cold. She never took her eyes off the gas station until it vanished behind us. Then she whispered something that made every hair on my arm stand up. David. What? I don't think we're the first family to take this shortcut. I checked the fuel gauge. Just under half a tank. Normally that would have been more than enough to reach the next town, but nothing about Black Hollow Road felt normal anymore. I glanced at Laura. We should have stopped back on the highway. She gave me a tired smile. I don't think that matters anymore. What do you mean? She looked out her window. I have this feeling. What feeling? Like this road wanted us to come here. Neither of us spoke after that. The forest slowly changed again. The burned trees disappeared, healthy pines returned, but something else replaced them. Small wooden crosses. At first there was only one, then another, then dozens. Each one stood only a few feet from the edge of the pavement. Some were new, others had nearly rotted away. None had flowers, none had names. Just weathered wooden crosses stretching deeper into the forest than I could see. Ethan counted quietly. 23, 24, 25. Finally he stopped. There are too many. A cold wind hit the truck. The outside temperature display dropped from 61 degrees Fahrenheit to 38 degrees Fahrenheit in less than 10 seconds. Laura noticed it immediately. That's impossible. I turned the heater higher. Instead of warm air, cold air poured from the vents, colder than the air outside. I shut the climate controls off completely. The cold continued for another minute, then suddenly disappeared. The heater worked normally again. None of us understood what had just happened. The road curved sharply around a hillside. As we came around the bend, I slammed on the brakes. A school bus sat across the road, old, Yellow paint faded almost white. Its engine wasn't running. Every emergency exit stood open. The folding passenger door was wide open. Backpacks lay scattered across the pavement. A pink lunchbox rested beside one tire. No children, no driver, no sound. Laura whispered, "Oh my God." I slowly pulled around the bus. Every window was empty. Yet as we passed, I heard something, children laughing, very softly, as though the sound came from somewhere deep inside the empty bus. I looked back immediately. Silence. The bus stood exactly where it had been, lifeless. A mile later, the dashboard lights flickered. Once, twice. Then every warning light illuminated at the same time. A BS check engine, oil pressure, battery, airbag, everything. The engine continued running perfectly. Then, every light went out together, as though nothing had happened. Laura took a deep breath. "David." "I know." "No." She pointed toward the windshield. "Look." Far ahead, standing in the middle of Black Hollow Road, was a single person, motionless, waiting. They weren't waving, they weren't walking, they were simply standing there, watching us approach. And this time, there was no way to pretend we'd imagined it. The figure never moved. It stood directly in the center of Black Hollow Road, nearly 200 yards ahead of us. I instinctively lifted my foot from the accelerator. Laura grabbed my arm. "Don't stop. I'll hit them. They're not moving." Neither was I. The truck rolled forward at barely 15 miles an hour. The closer we got, the stranger the figure looked. It appeared to be wearing an old sheriff's uniform. Its hat covered most of its face. Its hands hung unnaturally low at its sides. Then Ethan spoke. "Dad, yeah? That's not a person." My eyes never left the road. "What do you mean?" "It doesn't have a face." Only 50 yards remained. The headlights illuminated the figure completely. The uniform looked decades old. Mud covered the boots. A silver badge reflected our headlights. But where a face should have been, there was only darkness. Not a shadow, not a mask. Just empty blackness beneath the hat. I couldn't breathe. Every instinct told me to turn around. But there wasn't enough room. The trees pressed tightly against both sides of the road. "Go around it," Laura shouted. I jerked the steering wheel toward the opposite lane. The truck drifted left. We passed within a few feet of the figure. It never turned, never blinked, never moved. As we drove beside it, every light inside the truck went out. Dashboard, radio, headlights, everything. For 3 terrifying seconds. We were driving in complete darkness. Then, everything came back. I immediately checked the mirror. The road behind us was empty. The figure had vanished. Nobody spoke. Not for several minutes. Then, the GPS just suddenly came back to life. The screen flickered. A route appeared. Distance remaining? 7 miles, Laura exhaled. "We're getting out." "I hope so." For the first time in hours, I believed we might actually leave Black Hollow Road. Then Ethan quietly whispered, "Dad." I looked in the mirror. He wasn't looking behind us anymore. He was staring through the passenger window. "What is it?" He slowly pointed toward the forest. "There they are again." I looked. At first, nothing. Then, dozens of pale faces slowly appeared between the trees. Not bodies, only faces, men, women, children, standing perfectly still, watching our truck roll past. There were too many to count. None of them blinked. None of them smiled. They simply watched, as if they had been waiting for another family. 5 minutes later, the forest suddenly ended. Streetlights appeared. Cell service returned. The GPS announced, You have arrived at your destination. Behind us were alleys. Black Hollow Road was gone. There was no intersection, no sign, only a solid wall of trees. I slammed on the brakes, jumped out, walked back 50 yards. Nothing, no road, no tire tracks, only forest. Laura stood beside me. Neither of us said a word. When we finally reached home, I tried searching for Black Hollow Road online. Nothing, no county records, no maps, no satellite images. It simply didn't exist. The next morning, I emptied the truck. While grabbing Ethan's backpack, I noticed something lying beneath the back seat. It wasn't ours. It was an old sheriff's badge. Its surface was black with age. On the back, someone had scratched 4 words by hand. You came back alone. I froze. My heart stopped. I slowly turned toward the house. Laura was standing on the porch, looking confused. David. What? Where's Ethan? I looked into the back seat. It was empty. His headphones were still there, his blanket, his backpack, everything except my son, and to this day, neither the police nor anyone else believes he was ever with us on Black Hollow Road.